Gear up as Cash Miller and the team of accomplished guests steer you on an enlightening voyage filled with valuable tips, fresh insights, and effective strategies. Welcome to Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show.
Hello, everyone. This is Cash Miller. I'm the host of Marketing Masters, CEO of Titan Digital. Today, I've got Tim Fullerton of Fullerton Strategies. We're going to be talking about changes with Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and also how different social media platforms are really kind of trying to compete, because you've got like threads have come out through Instagram / Meta, Facebook, but the kind of traction it's actually getting. What's really changed about Twitter because of Musk taking over. So this is going to be a little different than our normal episodes, where we'll focus on a topic, because, social platforms are, they vary. And, when dramatic changes happen, as an advertiser, you got to really take that into account. Tim, it's great to have you on. Tell us a little bit about, you, your agency, but also your background, because your background's really interesting.
Well, thanks, Cash, for having me on. It's exciting to be here. So the last 6 months, I've been running my own digital marketing agency called Fullerton Strategies, which mostly provides like fractional CMO support to clients, both big and small. And it's been my first 6 months outside of or out of house, I guess I should say, which has been great. I've got a roster of a few clients, which has been really, really exciting so far. Before that, I spent about 20 years in both the corporate world and also the political world. So for the last 5, I was a VP of marketing at WeWork, which I know everybody is familiar with and could probably take up 4 podcasts worth of discussion.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm going to leave that one for today. But before that, I was the chief digital officer for the state of New York. I was in the Obama administration for 5 years, running digital strategy at the Interior Department, and I was also on the Obama for President campaign in 2008 in Chicago, running part of the email program. So big mix of a pretty diverse background, I guess you could say.
Well, it's that mix that helps, because like say today's, conversation, we're talking about Twitter, X, and really the platform's changed a lot. And so, throughout your career, I'm sure, you've had to use the platform from an advertising standpoint and stuff. So you're very familiar with, where it was, and, so you can see the differences, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've done it from the WeWork side, and I've done it from the political and the nonprofit side. And I think I signed up for Twitter in 2007. So I have been on the platform for, 16 years now, which seems insane. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the whole trajectory, and then obviously what I will say is the mess of the last 9 months or so.
Yeah, so let's start this off by talking about pre-Musk, and where Twitter was, and I guess go through how advertisers have been they were previously able to use the platform, so we can establish kind of a base of where it was, like when advertisers got on there, who were they trying to reach and stuff, and also what were they able to do on the platform, and then we'll go into what's changed about it since.
Yeah, so I mean, really, Twitter has been the digital town square for the internet for 10 years now or so. And it was really the place that you would go for breaking news, for political discussions. If the Grammys were happening or the Super Bowl, that's where people went to talk about culturally relevant events. And yes, it was driven, the majority of it was driven by news and politics, but there was all sorts of things that you could do on there. There was all sorts of communities. And, that you had a straight feed at one point where you could literally just follow along what everyone you follow is doing, which there's still many of us, myself included, would love to go back there, even though I know that is unlikely on any social platform at this point. And really, like, it was, there's no talk of these like shadow bans or like, promoting content over others. It was literally like, the ideas and the creativeness was what ruled the day. And that's where you saw some of the greatest tweets came from people with very few followers, because it just was something very creative. And it had its problems, verification issues, and I know financially there were some challenges as well. But and I think a lot of people talk about this, but like, it was my favorite social platform for a long time. And now it's one of the ones I like the least.
Yeah, because I mean, the platform was, a lot of it was breaking news, and it was discussions that you could have, between people, and they had to do a lot of policing, because you get people saying things, and we say, yes, you have First Amendment rights and things, you say, what you want to a certain degree, but like I say, if it's depending on where you were going with that, they had to monitor stuff. We don't want hate speech and things like that going on. So Twitter had like 6,000 employees, give or take, that were taking care of this. And I think that's one of the things that people don't realize, how many people, because you think of it as like the single website and stuff, what it takes, the effort, and, to be able to manage a platform like that.
Well, the reality is that managing any of these social platforms is incredibly difficult and will always make somebody mad. But when they did have those thousands of people, much like Meta does with Facebook and Instagram, thousands and thousands of people, it is necessary, because there are always going to be bad actors, and there are always going to be people who are trying to get attention by doing things that aren't appropriate. And the reality is, and I hear and I respect the conversations about the First Amendment, but like what a lot of people are also missing is that businesses have a right to decide what is being shared on their platform and what is not. Yeah. And, I think that is very important because they don't want to get sued. And I know there's laws out there regulating what, you could sue social media companies for what's posted, but they do also, there's a lot of work that's done, not just for hate speech and things like that, but also these just horrific, like it happened on Twitter recently. There was somebody shared some form of child pornography. Yeah. Like these are the things that need to be policed constantly. There are awful videos of animal violence that keep popping up on people's feeds. And these are the things that you need. AI can do some, but you need people on the judgment calls. And when you take that away, you essentially are incentivizing hate, and you're turning whatever platform you choose to get rid of those people on to just a swamp.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, when you don't see it, it's in the background. It doesn't mean it wasn't happening. It means people were catching it. And then suddenly when it's not getting caught and you see it, then of course the uproar, comes along, with that kind of thing. And we say, well, why are we seeing this? Advertisers, for a long time has been the issue, whether you're on, it could be a mainstream TV network, but like YouTube's had a lot of problems, of ads being shown on channels that the advertiser, deemed inappropriate, and they don't want to be associated with. And often people will associate an ad with that. They're watching it, or it showed up in their feed, and then you suddenly have this brand.
Right. Yeah, it's a monster problem, and it continues to be a problem. YouTube/Google continues to struggle with this. And, I think that for the most part, they do their best, but, they've made some decisions where they're deciding to allow any political speech, whether even if it's misinformation or talk about January 6th, to go up, because we're in an election year. And I think that, it's a really difficult call, but it just shows the importance of content moderation. Like, you have to have content moderation, or everybody will end up where really Twitter is now.
Yeah, you do. And, because I think one of the things that I've often pointed out to people in different years, because when they say, well, we should be, it's similar, like they'll try to compare it to like news sites and things like that, but the news chooses what it publishes, and these are private companies, or even if they're publicly traded, they're businesses. You are agreeing to their terms of service that you are going to abide by if you use the platform, and they've been explicit of what you can and cannot do on their platform, because it's still their platform. It's not yours to say whatever you want.
And I think that's the thing that people miss, or maybe they choose to miss so that they can make big noise out of this, is that these businesses are essentially allowing you in. And, you agree, we all agree. Also, we mostly don't read them, but like we all agree right. But that's our choice. And, click the button to say we agree. And everyone says that. And so, when like Donald Trump, for example, decides to continue to try to incite on Twitter, have with violent rhetoric. Jack Dorsey and the team had every right in their power to shut him down, and I would argue it was the right thing to do. And but it is difficult. But and I think it points also to needing probably clearer terms of service and guidance around these things, so that like there isn't ambiguity. Now he's going to say no matter what when he breaks laws, but like in most cases, I think if you point to very specific rules and guidance, people will either follow them or understand where they ran afoul.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. So yeah, most people don't read the terms and stuff. If they would, they would understand, what they can and cannot do. But you've still agreed to them whether you read them or not. In which case, the company has the right to enforce them. Let's talk. Okay, Musk is, he comes in. You've got Pre, and as a platform, lots of large brands have used it to communicate with their customers. It's one of the biggest things. It's kind of always be relevant in the conversation. I think of some of the things that have gone on of like Wendy's and McDonald's and stuff. Kind of having their verbal spats, and they do it in a fun manner. Because it becomes it's noticeable. And Twitter, if you look at, how many tweets have been copied and showed up, in news sites, and saying, hey, so-and-so said this, you got a whole article built around what somebody said on Twitter. It's always been very relevant, and big brands have always wanted to be in front of that 250 to 300 million-ish. They plateaued years ago where they have never been able to grow it. You have sports stars, same thing. They're all part of the conversation and saying things and whatnot. And so now Musk comes along. We all know about the 44 billion or whatever that he ended up paying for this platform, and then since then he took over 9 months or whatever ago and stuff. The number of changes and so many bad rollouts. I mean, it's one thing after another that they he cut the staff by 2/3 in multiple rounds of layoffs. And then he's made numerous changes. So let's talk about some of these changes that he's instituted lately.
Yeah, I mean, the list is so long, and it's kind of hard to remember.
It's hard to remember which ones stuck and which ones are
I know.
been undone again.
I think the most devastating one that he did, he toyed around with it and finally implemented it, was to basically blow up the verification policy and program that they had, which that program was specifically meant to just signify that the account that you are reading has been verified by Twitter as the person that they say they are. That's it. There was no lifting of content or anything like that. It was just to say who you were, and it was mostly for politicians and reporters and well-known people. They did expand it at one point, which is I actually was verified on Twitter up until Musk changed, and I had to provide my passport. I literally uploaded my passport to them to show them that I was me. And so it was really designed to just validate that a person is who they say they are. Now, there were problems with it, and there were problems with how they let certain people in. I think mine's a good example of there was a little window where they let people apply, and I was at an organization of some size at the point, and I'd been on the political campaigns, so I got it. And there were problems with that. But what has happened since is when he has completely changed that to pay to play. So if you pay $8 a month, you get verified. Now, they don't verify your personal information. There is none of that. There's no license. There's no passport. There's nothing. You just pay, and you can call yourself, Musk fan 23 and have a verification. Actually, I think he took that off because it affected him, which is another problem. But you could say you were, Trump at one point, and I think they fixed a little bit. But what's happened is that the verification is now meaningless, and frankly, most people would be horrified to have the blue check now. I don't want it back. Wasn't a big deal in the first place, but they completely destroyed it, and now the only people who want the verification are generally. Some business people want it, but also it's people on the right that just, want something to show some validity to what they are. It's not even like big personalities. I just mean people with like 50 followers or something. So if you read tweets now, they push all of the new Twitter Blue, we'll call it rather than verified. The Twitter Blue comments are all at the beginning. And if you look at the replies in a lot of tweets, it's the most insane. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's just the most insane, like a lot of racist and sexist and just really crude stuff, which just basically makes it impossible to read.
Yeah. So, and he did it. So this is, when he first took over, he clobbered, he freaked out a lot of the advertisers, and especially as he started cutting staff and you get more bad content on there, in which case more advertisers started pulling their budgets and whatnot. And, and Twitter wasn't making money to begin with, even when he took over. Now he starts slashing costs with the idea that if I cut all these costs, then it can make money. But you also ended up, as the platform, became unstable, you ended up with a lot of people that, advertisers that left the platform, in which case you kill your revenue, at the same time. So okay, great. You cut your costs and then your revenue went with it anyway. So now you're back to square one. Yet now, and that's why like the blue check marks came along. Okay, I could charge for this, and we can do these verifications. And then it was, hey, the system's rolled out. No, it's not working correctly. Now it's back. There's been a lot of stops and starts, with it, for different programs they've rolled out.
Yeah, I mean, it's been chaos. I mean, I think that's the easiest way to say it. At first, he came in and he laid off 2/3 of the team, pretty much all of the product managers,
some of those
engineers.
Yeah, I was going to say some of those layoffs were also really public. Not just the numbers, but the way he went about some of them.
Well, and he just treated them with no respect, right? He's like, we don't need these people, and da da da. It's and like, look, layoffs are hard. Every company has them. I've experienced like being at places that have had them. There's not a great way to do it, but mocking people or saying they're useless out the door isn't really and it's not a good signal to brands either. And then, they're down to like 2,000, 2,500 or something. And the Twitter infrastructure is incredibly complex. There's nothing like it. So then you are took away all like several layers of people who knew this stuff. And it takes a lot to keep that going. I mean, they were, like I said, 300, 400 million daily users. Like keeping that something like that going is very difficult. And then you couple it with, him, talking about how the media is not to be trusted, and all of this, all of this crazy stuff he talks about. And brands don't want to be in the political conversation, right? Like it's toxic enough as it is. And he basically made that impossible for them. So I mean, I think he lost like 25, 50% of the revenue, maybe even more, which I'm sorry, but you can't make that up with $8 a month subscriptions. It is not possible to do that.
Yeah, because you're not going to get enough people willing to pay for it. Yeah, and a lot of times, like you can see high user numbers, like the number of accounts and things like that, but how many are active is a different story. I say, I know, I've got a Twitter account. Occasionally I get somebody trying to log into the thing, but I don't log into it anymore. It's just, I say the platform's become so bad. It's like, well, why bother? So it's a lot. There's so much change. It's like this ridiculous roller coaster that eventually it doesn't come to a stop. It runs off the rails.
Right. And I think that we're witnessing the slow burn of that. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to crash immediately. And like, that would probably be highly unlikely. And it didn't. But I think he is hell-bent on running out the people who actually built Twitter, whether it's the employees or it's the people who were producing all the content, which was frankly most of the verified users. And something like 80% of the content or something like that came from like 1 or 2% of the users. Like a lot of people just watched, like they just lurked, right? And he has basically given them all the double middle finger. And so how is he going to replace that content? And the reality is, like, if you look on your For You page, which they forced on everybody, it's just a landmine of garbage. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't want to see people talking about how vaccines cause autism, because they don't. And like, and it's not a debate. They don't. Or some right-wing person making some horrifically sexist comments about women. I don't want to see it. And so if I'm the individual who doesn't want to see it, imagining the folks at the large agencies or the brands going, we don't want to show up next to some guy who got kicked off the platform 3 years ago for spouting pseudo like Nazi support. Like, come on, like it doesn't make it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. Okay. So now his latest stunt, is that, okay, it's not Twitter anymore. You've got, 15 years or something, a little bit longer than that, of brand equity built up. Yeah. And you're going to name it X, literally, and I get you got SpaceX and all of that, but it's like, now you're destroying the brand equity. Everything I read news articles, and if you see a post or something, it's X, formerly known as Twitter.
It's like the Prince thing, right? When he changed his name to the symbol, it was like the artist formerly known as Prince. Yeah.
And then and even the rollout of their own signage went wrong. I mean, they put up the sign on the building and stuff, and they were like, "You don't have a permit." They made him take it down. I mean, if you could do it wrong, I mean, this is supposed to be a guy that's like, brilliant, and he has done some brilliant business things, just not with Twitter.
Well, and I think that I don't think I've ever seen, outside of somebody who's committed a horrific crime or something, I don't think I've seen somebody torpedo their personal brand as fast as Elon Musk has. And I think that the trouble for him with that is that when people really start to look at SpaceX and Tesla in particular, not so much PayPal, but those two, he bought those from people. Everyone sort of assumed that he started those companies from scratch. And the reality is that he didn't. And so now all of a sudden you've got him, at the reins here on a completely different business model, right? He's not selling cars, and he's not selling government contracts for space. He is dealing directly with the public. And I think it's showing that, he is brilliant in many ways. Like Tesla, what they were able to do is incredible. Like, you can't take that away from them. SpaceX, it's the same. But now that he is like solely in charge and unraveling things over on Twitter, like, you've got to question his business acumen in at least certain areas. And I think he is not equipped to run a social media platform. He's never done it before. And the other problem is that he only has people around him who say yes. And I think that is a big problem for many execs, certainly not just him. But like, there's nobody there to push back. He's got these advisors like this David Marks and Jason Calacanis and these people who just pump what he's saying, even though they were saying completely opposite things before, like, he was in there. And so it's just an echo chamber. So he's not even getting the right advice, because frankly, he doesn't want it.
Yeah, no, he does have a tendency of a bit of a God complex, and thinking that he knows better than everybody else. So yes, he surrounds himself with a bunch of yes men and, people, that, will do whatever he wants, because he's accumulated a lot of his own power and whatnot. And he has been successful with his other businesses. What do you think is his ultimate motivation of, because it seemed like when he first bought Twitter, first it was like, I'll buy it, I'll fix it. Then it's, no, I don't want it. And then, okay, well, fine, I'll buy it because I don't have a choice now. So what do you think the end game for Twitter is?
Well, I think that, you hit something really important there that people seem to forget, is that he tried to back out of this deal. Like, he kind of got into it in the very Elon way, right? Like,
Twitter should have let him too.
I know. Well, I mean, if I'm the Twitter board, you have to accept that deal, right? Because that company wasn't worth worth $44 billion.
No way.
So like, they kind of were stuck with it. And, I think he thought he could just, snap his fingers and have it magically and turn it around. And he's realized how difficult it is. And I think what's going to happen, and is happening now, is that he is creating a self-contained ecosystem to feed his ego and drive, basically create the biggest Elon fanboy network that's out there. He doesn't want people like me there. And I have, I have 18,000 followers. It's not like a lot, but it's like it's a, decent size. He doesn't want me there. He doesn't want the reporters there. He doesn't want celebs there. Well, certain celebs. So it's like, who are you building for? And it just kind of seems like right now he's just like, I just want to play toy that will just like feed me, like, give me affirmation and tell me how wonderful I am. And you know what? I've sunk $44 billion in this, but guess what? I still have 200. So it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
And I think that it feels like that's going, and maybe he dumps it at some point.
I don't think anybody would buy it. Yeah. What's he? If anybody, nobody would pay anywhere near what he paid. So that might not be enough. If anybody's even.
Yeah, it's 50% at best. I think that Twitter announced that it was like 20, which I highly doubt. We are probably talking teens, if not like more in the 8 to 10 range.
I think with the rebrand, I think he's destroyed any resale value because of the fact that he's caused so many problems that whoever buys it would have to fix them. And it would take a ton of work just to get back to where it was before he bought it. I don't think that a large company like SoftBank or something might be willing to do it. Knowing that it's become this huge turnaround thing that that it's probably not worth risking that kind of money.
Well, the problem is that the people that he's boosting on this platform are not the people that brands want to be in front of for the most part. And so you're right. Like, you would have to buy it on the cheap, change it back to Twitter. But then you'd have a really, really hard time gaining the trust back from people who have been burned over the last, actually, I'm thinking about it now, it's more like a year, not 9 months since he's been in charge. And it's just going to be a really difficult thing, I think, to do. And that's why I kind of feel like he's in this world where he's like, well, I'm just gonna make this the thing, an echo chamber, and get revenue off of that world, and shrink this thing down to enough that maybe I can eke out a profit or break even. But like, I mean, he's certainly going to save some server costs because there's going to be far less people on there. So I can see it cost some cuts there, but like, it's really a mystery. It doesn't, from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's a slow motion implosion, piece by piece. So let's talk alternatives, because, Threads came out and it, of course, came out hot, but it's slowing down now. And it's, of course, a Meta product. Like I say, they attached it to Instagram so that they could make user sign up easy. And was it Dorsey's got Blue Sky? I think it is. So he's got an alternative. There's been what's the other one, Mastodon or whatnot. So there's some alternatives where the platforms are designed in a similar fashion. Do we see people adopting those platforms? Which one might stand out and stuff? Because obviously Dorsey built Twitter, or was one of the co-owners and such. So can he get traction? But even Twitter wasn't making money. So what he's running it.
So there's with these competitors, and I've been on all of them, and a couple others are Post, which is what I actually really like, and Spoutable, which is mostly for progressives, but is a pretty close Twitter clone. But here, the problem that I've seen with both those guys and then also with Threads from Meta, on the smaller guys who came out first, the problem's been capacity. They, I think, have all probably come out too early because they saw the opportunity, but they couldn't scale because they were new platforms, and it's a huge engineering feat to be able to compete with Twitter. So they all did that, and then there were wait lists. And look, like, the attention span of people is minuscule. So if you're, if you can't be out, like, it honestly would be better to wait, because you'll have your moment, and like, there's going to be one moment that's going to be huge. And if you aren't ready for it, it's going to be a struggle. And I think that's what we've seen with these guys. And then the flip on Meta, or Meta's Threads, they had the capacity and they were hughtely successful out of the gate, right? Like, it was like 100 million users in
like 3 days or something, like
3 days, like nothing, no app had ever been downloaded at that rate, like nothing. But the problem that they are facing, and it is a conscious decision that they made, is that they did not want to focus on news and politics or live events. They wanted it to be more of a like cultural, more like basically a text version of Instagram. Well, there's a lot of problems with that. One, nobody wants that.
News and politics drive the conversation.
I mean, if you want to launch a real-time app and you want to compete with Twitter, you need to compete with the best of Twitter, which is onboarding all of those news folks, all of those people who are using Twitter the way it was meant to be used. Creating a pseudo threat, version doesn't work. Like, I can't tell you, there's been several people I've read things from, and myself, like, if a breaking news happens, you can't find it on Threads because they're not prioritizing it. And they focused on this, all these celebs. And I'll be honest, most celebrity social is awful. And so it's run by an agency or a person.
Yeah.
Like,
they don't have the time to,
they don't do it, right? Because they don't have the time. And then it was such an inauthentic, all of a sudden you're seeing all these people, I'm so glad to be on Threads. And then they didn't post again. Like, it was like, it was almost like they were paid to do one, and then that was it. So I really wished, and I think Threads still has a chance, but they've got to course correct, or it's just going to be nothing. And then I think we're going to be looking at niche audiences for all of them. Like, Post is a cool one for long form content, and you can actually pay people for their posts, which is really interesting. Blue Sky's got a good community with it, but they're having a hard time growing because, again, like, they haven't opened the floodgates. And you just gotta. It is a tough balance, but I think it also points to the fact that I think this is where both of our horns, like, marketing needs to be in the decision making around product, because there has to be someone that's like, guys, like, you got to be ready, but there's also a moment. Like, how do we, because otherwise you're going to fail.
Yeah, and anything with social, like you say, because we've had social platforms for so long, and you get ones that get traction, and you get others that don't. And like you said, if you aren't ready for an onrush, and it could be server capacity and things like that, a technical nature. If they open up the floodgates, then they crash the site. In which case, then you have a bad experience, and then people don't come back. So it's really hard from a social, like Facebook has obviously the resources. They can open, floodgates, but then they're not paying attention. They really should have done their homework more, about what actually worked about Twitter. It's like, say, why did people even go there to begin with? Because of the things that were prioritized. You can't tell me they can't make their own algorithm, prioritize those same things. So that you see more news, you see headlines, you see, political, discussions, but those are the things that drove conversation, that got people interested and such. And then if you're prepared to do the policing end of it, knowing that, that's going to come up too, then you could have, a really good platform.
I mean, here's the reality. Like, people like to be places that seem active and busy and engaged.
Yeah.
The people who build that are the news, the politics, live events. And then that allows for smaller communities to move up, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's all these people here, I'm going to do my thing here too. But if you just get a list of threads that, like, makes no sense, and you're like, who's this? And it's a challenge. And I think they made a huge mistake with that rollout.
Yeah, it's a conversation platform. Instagram, people engage because they want to see the imagery and the videos and things like that. And that's what they do with TikTok. And, but Twitter has never been that. Yeah, they expanded how long, the character counts were and stuff, and that you could post video. But, ultimately it was still, a conversational platform. So it's text-based more than anything. And so you've got to be, you have to have things that get people to engage with that, that conversation and want to be part of it, because that's not what happens on an Instagram. You like photos and stuff, and somebody's vacation thing or the food they ate or whatever, like, you engage with it individually, but you're leaving a comment and stuff. You're not, like I say, and that's where I think Zuckerberg, he failed, because he didn't understand the differences, of what you already have and what this is, and it's never been the same.
Yeah, it's totally right, and I think that they are trying to put the meta, approach onto a live platform. Yeah. It doesn't work that way, and you can't, if you algorithm everything to death, like, you're going to kill you. You just aren't going to be successful, and they're not, right? Their exit rates are astronomical.
Yeah.
And the reason obviously is because people are not engaged on the platform, because they're not prioritizing that, and that is a huge problem.
Yeah. It always amazes me how the billionaires always think they, because of their success, obviously, but they think they know better than everybody else. I mean, Zuckerberg might be able to figure it out. I know heard he was, didn't want to do the cage match with Musk, so so he's got a little extra time, to devote to it. But otherwise, like I say, I think X is going to be a slow, fade away over time. It stays in the news because Musk tries something new that fails, dramatically. And that's what the part that makes the news. So it's the only thing like keeping it relevant to any degree right now. So
I know, and I will just for fun that ridiculous cage match thing that was proposed. By the way, Zuckerberg would destroy Musk at that. He is like an actual jiu-jitsu practicer and has done it for years. And Elon doesn't do anything. Yeah. So it's, I just have to say it because like the ego on Elon to think that he could actually like do anything in that arena, it would be very bad for him, which points to, again, his decision-making choices.
But I'll tell you what,
it's like,
they put it on pay-per-view, and I'll tell you what, a lot of people might buy that one just for the comedy of it, to see, kind of Musk put it in his place.
Right.
But yeah, Zuckerberg, I know, jiu-jitsu or whatever, he's done martial arts for years. I think he was in South Korea recently or something, and for a contest that were going on and everything. So, yeah. Zuckerberg would win that one. This has been a great conversation. If somebody needed your marketing expertise, because you've worked with a lot of, a number of big organizations and such, how would people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, really the best way is go to my website, which is fullertonstrategies.com, Fullerton like the city. Or, you can find me on LinkedIn under Tim Fullerton. I'd be happy to talk to anybody on either of those platforms.
Okay, well, this has been great. Again, I'm Cash Miller, the host of Marketing Masters, CEO of Titan Digital. We've been talking Twitter, X, what has become of it, and some of the alternatives that are out there, but they've got some drawbacks as well. So if you're thinking of advertising those routes, be very careful right now because the landscape is a lot different. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.